open.
Thank you, sir. I now request our chief guest, Shri Lalit Mohan Singh, to deliver the convocation address.
Dr. M.S. Pataviram, Shri Vijay Sahu, Dr. Y. Rajaram, Dr. Regimen Thomas, faculty and staff of RIMS, other distinguished guests here, the young graduates to be, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege for me to be here today to address the young men and women who will become, in a short while, the proud possessors of degrees and medals from this great institute. It will be appropriate if I begin my remarks by paying a tribute to one of the great gurus of India, Kautilya or Chanakya, whose wisdom has guided India for the past 24 centuries. And this is the advice he gave to the young scholars of his time. Pathaputra sada nityam aksharam hridaya kuru vidya sarvatra pujatya. A rough translation would be, study diligently, my son, memorize your facts. A ruler is worshipped only in his country, but learning is worshipped everywhere. I cited Kautilya's Niti Shastra of the 4th century BC to illustrate the fact that education and learning have always been an important element of our Indian heritage. I am pleased that students from this great city have taken Kautilya seriously and have earned respect and recognition throughout the world. We often take education for granted. Let me therefore illustrate from a personal example how education can be transformational. My family hails from Odisha, the poorest state in India, and my village is located in one of the most backward regions of Odisha. About 100 years ago, the elders of this totally illiterate village decided to send one of their children to school, who happened to be my orphan father. To gain admission, my father walked to the nearest school, which was some 60 miles away. With the help of scholarships and tuitions, he managed to complete his education in India and proceeded to obtain a doctorate in England. Besides being one of the best known poets in the Odia language, he was also a noted educationist and intellectual. Thanks to him, all his 5 children received the best of education in India. I, in turn, sent my children to the universities of Cambridge, London, and Columbia. Sadly, my village continues to be poor, and my cousins and relatives are still marginal farmers, living from hand to mouth. But today, fortunately, no child in the village has to walk more than 10 minutes to attend school. Our family helped in setting up a government high school in the village, appropriately named after my father. My family story is not unique. Millions of families unfamiliar with education for past centuries are sending their children to school for the first time. Education will be the single most important factor for the transformation of India. I'd like to pay a tribute, therefore, to Dr. M.S. Ramaiah, the founder of this great institution, for his vision, for his wisdom, and for his enterprise. And I'm very pleased that the family traditions, the noble traditions of Dr. Ramaiah are being followed by his son and by the rest of his family. One of the problems in addressing a convocation is that Students like you are already smart and clever and hardly in need of any advice. Let me nevertheless share 4 ideas with you, which I feel may be useful for you as you embark on your journey in life with a new degree in your hand. The first is my conviction that there has never been any time in history which can be considered better than the present. Older people often complain about the present and talk fondly about the good old days. Don't worry, it happens to every generation. I think people are sentimental as they grow older and their memory starts becoming weaker. I am convinced that we are fortunate to be living today in what I consider to be the best period in the history of the world. This is not to deny that poverty, disease and destitution still prevail in many parts of the world. However, a smaller percentage of people are poor compared to past periods of history. More and more people not only have greater access to food, shelter, education and health care, but are also enjoying the benefits of democracy and human rights. When I look back at the past, I don't see any good old days. Life was tough for people in my parents' generation. It was equally difficult when I was growing up about 50 years ago. The oil lamps which my father used for studying were replaced by kerosene lanterns when I was a student. Electricity came much later, so did the telephone. There was a shortage of almost everything. Food grains, milk, eggs, fruits, everything was in short supply. To order a telephone or a gas cylinder, you needed the influence of an MP or a senior officer, have phones, and close to 1 billion possess mobile phones. There was no TV in 1950. By 1984, we had established 1 channel, and there were 3.5 million television sets in India. Today, every other family has a television set with almost 1,000 channels to choose from. Let me underline another major change from those days. In my college, there were maybe 5 girls in a class of 100. Today, I am pleased to see that girls outnumber boys in most universities. What a spectacular achievement. Girls today can decide on their career, choose their life partner, and plan their own lifestyle. Women have excelled in India as business executives, engineers, diplomats, doctors, and even as fighter pilots. There are serious concerns, of course, about women's safety, sexual harassment, dowry, and gender inequality. The government, the courts, and society are coping with these problems. Let us, however, celebrate the fact that women in our country and elsewhere in the world are enjoying freedoms which were not available to them at any other time in our past history. My second statement is that the future is better than you think. It's natural for young people to face the future with anxiety about jobs, about careers, about family life. Don't apply to you, because I was just told that all of you have already secured your jobs. But generally, the youth in the country look at the future with anxiety. But you must all be convinced that life is going to be better, even better, in the years ahead. India, in the years after independence, was a desperately poor developing country. Even in the early 90s, when I was posted as a senior diplomat in Washington, India was regarded by Americans and by the West in general as a black hole, a basket case, a country without hope. I returned to Washington as ambassador in the early part of this century. And guess what? The same Americans were willing to embrace us as a strategic partner. In fact, President Obama has described Indo-US relations as the defining partnership in the 21st century. With good reason, India is now regarded as a rising power, as a global leader, and as a nation and civilization that is finding its rightful place in the world. The projection for the future is very optimistic. India's GDP, which was $2.3 trillion in 2000, and this is in purchasing power parity, is currently around $5 trillion, is expected to reach about $40 trillion around 2050, which will be about the same as the projected GDP of the United States in 1950. The India of the future, which you are going to live in, is on the drawing boards already. It will be a digital India, an India with smart cities, connected by highways and bullet trains. It will be an India, hopefully, with better education and skills, with improved agriculture and a modern industrial infrastructure. I am hopeful that all this will be achieved without compromising on our rich, diverse and inclusive culture, which is the hallmark of Indian civilization. My third idea is to impress on you the need to be responsible global citizens. The better world that I have outlined for you is threatened today by three potential calamities: climate change, nuclear weapons, and international terrorism. Within a couple of weeks, the world's leaders will meet in Paris to discuss how to deal with climate change. Global warming is already causing longer summers, frequent floods and drought, unseasonal cyclones, and unpredictable weather. For instance, Bangalore has seen more rain this month than in the past 100 years. If the world leaders do not agree on an effective plan of action to deal with climate change, our planet will not be habitable for future generations. Nuclear weapons are another existential threat to the world. 9 countries, including India, possess close to 17,000 nuclear weapons which can destroy the world several times over. The world needs to get rid of these weapons of mass destruction. You are all familiar with international terrorism. India has been a victim of such terrorism for close to 60 years, having lost over 60,000 innocent lives during this period. Apart from terrorist groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Hizb ul-Mujahideen, the Haqqani Network, the Dawood Gang, all supported by Pakistan, new threats are coming in the shape of ISIS or ISIL or Daesh, as it is called. Paris, where the world leaders are going to meet soon, amidst unprecedented security, has been the venue of brutal attacks by the ISIS, which left 130 innocent people dead. My plea to you, my young friends, is that you must become responsible global citizens and join the forces fighting the threats of climate change, of nuclear weapons, and international terrorism. And the final thought that I want to share with you is that India will conquer the world. India on its way to conquer the world. Yes, we need to celebrate it. India will conquer the world, not by military means or by aggression, but with its greatest and most powerful weapon, soft power. It is our democracy, our rich and diverse culture, and our spirit of tolerance that makes India unique in the world. Our civilization has been enriched by ideas coming from different parts of the world, from the Middle East, from Southeast Asia, from Europe, and from the Americas. Equally, Indian culture has traveled to the farthest corners of the world. There is not a country today that is not familiar with Indian food, films, or fashion, or the spiritual values, yoga, and Ayurveda. We need not be afraid of the globalization of India. Instead, we must celebrate the Indianization of the globe which is taking place right now. The 21st century will indeed be India's century, and you are going to live to see this. I congratulate you, all of you, for the degrees, awards, and medals that you have richly deserved, and wish you the best of luck and happiness in the years to come. Jai Hind.